It's a very interesting question. I was asked recently that so many people seem to spontaneously attain or awaken, then why is this necessity for spiritual process or spiritual practice? Why sadhana is needed? Because people like the Krishnamurtis, Jiddu and Yuji, Jiddu Krishnamurti and Yuji Krishnamurti, both used to say you cannot get enlightenment by doing any of these processes. So I thought it was a very interesting question, and I said, both of them are actually right. They're like, what? You go around teaching all these things. you're you're saying that. What do you mean? I said, you don't do sadhana, you don't do spiritual process to become enlightened or to be liberated. That is purely an action of grace, that is purely an action of the shakti, that is purely an action of the force. You do sadhana so that you remove all the obstacles towards the shakti flowing into you. All the vignams, all the conditionings, all the limitations, all the problems. And there is something deeper, when you get what is called jagran, when you get activated, when the source of life, which is known in yoga as the Kundalini Shakti, when it activates in you, the chances are that you go a little berserk, because not only does it release usually intense heat, it can bring about very dramatic physical transformations. I have seen people, the shape and color of their eyes change. The face kind of, it's like one of those things we see in a Jim Carrey movie, and one very peculiar thing that is not very common, but it is not unknown, is that when the Kundalini activates, the bones on your hand can realign themselves. So when we stand normally and we put our hands down, the back of our hands face people. Yes? If we stand and we just leave our hands down, the back of our hands will face people. But with the activation, very often what happens is either the elbow or the wrist, the entire thing rotates, and then when the person stands, the palms are facing you. If you look at the statues of the Jain Tirthankaras, Mahavira and all of them, the palms are facing you. Now, you must realize that all murtis that we make in India are never about the physical body. It is always about the energy body. It is always about the pranamaya kosha. So, whenever we look at a murti of a devta or a devi, it is never the external physical, it is that the pranic body that is always represented. But this is a physical thing, and again I have seen this. UG Krishnamurti also had the same, his palms, his entire hand rotated on the wrist. Now, it's never an easy process. The scale of the transformation is mild discomfort to complete agony. Because your body is in very deep comfort, habit, stasis, inertia, all of which are described in yoga by the one word tamas. To shift tamas, you usually need something that is the equivalent of a flamethrower, and that is why the Kundalini is called the Agni Sarpam, the serpent of fire. Because when it activates, the usual experience is that of heat, though it is not compulsory. Intense cold can also, so that is why in the Western tradition they knew this whole Kundalini business is dragons, which is why they even have the notion of the ice dragon, the water dragon, because that is how when the lunar channel the energy flows. And these are not magical or supernatural things. These are all very normal, ordinary things which millions of people are experiencing at the current moment. The whole problem is that when the energy begins to flow, most people, because human beings being human beings, megalomania develops. I am now unique and special in the universe. You know, megalos, that is the original word for great in Greek, the sense of feeling great. Alexander Megalos, that is, because there were many Alexanders, but he was the first one who was Megalos. But even in that word, megalomania is not very far away from megalos. so, so yeah, that sense of heightened expansion very often derails people, which is why the sadhana is needed, because the sadhana will prevent you. What happened to somebody like Yogi was that he was spontaneously activated. What happened to Jiddu Krishnamurti was that he was activated by the theosophists who had all the knowledge from books, and they did not know what to do with him. So he suffered every day of his life because the Kundalini activation was running riot and his spine was just one zone of permanent pain. Now, if he had gone to any halfway decent yogi, it could have been fixed, but he was being promoted as the world savior. No? They had created one whole new organization called the Order of the Star. And when he was 25, he was going to be announced as the reincarnation of the Maitreya Buddha. And he's the world savior. And he comes on stage and he blasts all organizations and all spiritual practices once and for all. He makes his famous speech called Truth is a Pathless Land, where he rejects theosophy, he rejects all notions of saviors, everything. And this all comes because people who didn't know what they were doing were fiddling with these things. So which is why in yoga it is insisted, mentor, guru, parampara, lineage. People who know what is going on, people who traverse the ground before you, people who can help you when you get into difficulty. And Leadbeater, Blavatsky, Annie Besant, they never learned from any yogis. They were always learning from books. And in books, the full truth is never written. Only 98% of the process is ever written in a book. 2% is always held back. So anybody who learns a mantra or a meditation from a book is making a serious error. You will never get the full transmission from that. They are there so that the knowledge will not completely evaporate, or at least the basic skeleton remains. But you never ever get the full knowledge of how a process works from a book. It's impossible. Not even from Bihar School of Yoga, who write the most authentic and best books on the matter, but even they hold it back. 2% is always held back, taken for granted. 2% will be held back. It's a safeguard, because again, somebody without preparation will do a meditational practice or will do a breath, and insanity is the commonest. A lot of people who are insane have actually only experienced Kundalini activation, and amongst the Sufis they are well known. They are called mast. They are people with sort of unusual spiritual ability, but they are nuts. And Meher Baba, who used to be one of the great spiritual masters of the early 20th century, he had made it his special job to go looking for these guys and fixing them. So the reason why we do sadhana is for this reason. Sadhana is done so that sanity is retained. not so that we become enlightened, and not so that we become liberated. That will happen. But if you don't have the discipline of doing it on a daily basis, see, because here is another thing, and this is not something that I've seen in any psychology book, but yogis know it. Insanity resides in the tissues. The tissues of your body are where you keep your insanity, and all your emotional grief you keep in your joints. All the pain, all the emotion we keep in our joints, which is why every time we Any joint that we crack, we feel automatically better because there has been emotional pain. There has been emotional pain. Then yoga knows that. But insanity resides in the tissues. And guaranteed, when you do some kind of intense meditative process, any kind of intense mantra practice, any kind of intense asana practice, any kind of intense breathing practice, we are not really sane, we are just socially in the zone which is acceptable. Because any kind of intense fear or grief can break your mind. It's quite easy to break a human being. All you need to do is shut them up in a room with no light and no sound. 24 hours. You don't need to torture people. People torture other people not because they want information out which is vital to national security. They do it because they are sadists. They like torturing other people. You really want to break a person, all you need is a soundproof, light-proof room. That person's gone. In 24 hours, they have no physical orientation anymore. You have no idea which way is up, which way is down. You have, because the lack of sound, the lack of light, the lack of stimulus just drives your body crazy. And yogis do exactly that. They do everything possible to go into that state where, let us see what comes out when we don't have stimulus. Most of us do not have authentic reactions. We have responses to stimulus. Now, these things are all well known in yoga, which is why yogis have never been interested in psychology and psychological theory. Their whole idea, their whole attitude is, but that is about diseased people, no? It is not about healthy minds. It is about diseased minds and how to rectify it. What about the healthy mind and what the healthy mind can accomplish, or what the healthy mind experiences? So understand this. Emotions reside in the joints, insanity in the tissue. In your flesh, that's what they say. And when you do these processes, it comes out. They say if you can do one asana properly, that's one big life karma broken. Because if you do any asana, it doesn't matter what the asana is. It doesn't have to be one of those extremely difficult ones. If you do any one asana properly, instantly you will feel a shift in your energy. You are connected to the force and it starts flowing into you. If it is not flowing into you, you have not yet done the asana properly. So most masters are masters only of one asana. Nowadays we have come to the state, even last week I said it, people have that little mic and, and they are performing the asana and talking. Like a old school yogi will commit suicide before to open your mouth when you're doing an asana is like, you have no idea the kind of toxin release that happens. It's just insanity, but what to do? So this sense of whatever the lineage or the parampara or the system is, whether it is mantra or it is meditation or it is asana or a combination or even just going to a temple, whatever it is, something activates you, something connects you to the force that is called Jagran. So that is what, after that it develops, it flows. The more receptive you are, the wider your capacity to receive it, the more the transformation happens. Yes, mantra, meditation, sadhana, 8 spiritual breaths, affirmations, all of that widen the connection, widen the activation, certainly. But in itself, they are not the same. But why do we do? Why do we do that every day in a disciplined pattern? For this reason, because when we are in sadhana, when we are in discipline, when we are in lineage, when we have a group of people who know what is going on, all the trouble that arises because all of us have experienced grief, all of us have experienced sorrow, loss, and trust me when I tell you, it is not processed. And when you sit in meditation, the way it comes roaring out, like a tiger that has just seen breakfast, and like, okay, And very often stuff that you do not even know that you are feeling comes out. Pain or sorrow or happiness, and suddenly for no reason that you're laughing, or suddenly for no reason you've been sitting calmly in meditation and you wake up and you find that the front of your shirt or t-shirt or whatever is soaked because you've been weeping and you didn't even know that you've been weeping. You just had one whole catharsis without even being aware of it. And if you become experienced in meditation, the mind shuts down, because the mind is just, it's a habit of the mind to keep chattering away. The mind actually doesn't need to be on all the time. Even when we sleep, our mind is on, because then dreams happen. So our mind is 24/7 on duty, and the mind doesn't need to be on. And the first time your mind stops, you think, that's it, I am now certifiably insane. What has happened? There are no thoughts. Instead of celebrating that for one moment you don't have any more. So these things are the reason why we do sadhana, because sadhana is for sanity. I keep saying that. In itself, it may not be enough, which is why they keep saying, find somebody who knows what, get initiated, because if you're linked through a lineage, if you're linked through a group of people who have already gone through this, then their protection is there and the whole system's protection is there. There is a whole systemic protection, whereas if you pick up a book or you just get activated spontaneously because you had the good luck or the bad luck to go to a secret place, after that what do? You're on your own. And you cast around. And I get this all the time. I get this all the time from people who spontaneously awakened. Then they see my videos and they realize, oh, this guy knows what is happening to me. And they write to me. Okay, this has been happening. Then the other thing I always have to do is calm them down, because megalomania. They are convinced that they are the unique person in the universe, and I have to calm them down on that. Some of them don't like it. The minute that specialness is not validated, they drop it. But most of them, it just happens. Or they do some process partially and it happens and they get scared and they leave it through. Now again, you need somebody experienced at that moment to tell you, no, just see it through. This is just a temporary phase. It will be over. Now, these things were not something that needed to be communicated. You see, in our culture, we were very integrated that way. The thought that you had to learn yoga or meditation specifically would have been laughable. It was just something that everybody did because they knew this is a way to bring a human being to the optimal level of functionality or the optimal level of vibration. Now matters have become very bad, but still, just when matters seem to be at rock bottom, something or the other always opens up. So it seems that now at least people are becoming very spiritual about personal transformation, very serious about personal transformation, and not in a look at me, I am holy way, but just in a there is a better way to live. And that is all that spirituality means. It means that you have got connected to that source of life. Because certainly, you see, the other problem, of course, is that some psychic abilities or some kind of weird stuff activates in you, and that again is a constant reason for derailment. People immediately think, oh, I have become enlightened. No, you have just got one mild and useless siddhi. Like very often this happens in yoga. You suddenly start being able to understand what people are thinking. And you think, oh wow, it's wonderful. And I can tell you it's immensely boring because most people don't have anything interesting actually in their thoughts. Or you can start communicating to animals. Again, there is nothing. Cats have catty thoughts, dogs have doggy thoughts. Then there is nothing really. On the other hand, the reason I say it is because there was a lady who used to come to the Prabhadevi group, and I was saying how, yogis have a special affinity for snakes because the natural vibration of the snake is like the vibration that the yogi tries to, and I can sort of understand. If I'm in that vibration, I can understand the language of snakes and dogs and cats and things like that. And she just breathed this big sigh of relief because, my son, from the time he's a small boy, he can speak to snakes, and he has 20 of them in his room all the time. And so, what was a matter of great shame and fear, now she realizes very normal that the boy had that ability from childhood. Again, there is nothing especially spiritual about it. It does not help you in any way. It's just something that sometimes activates. Many things happen, many absurd things happen. Your sense of smell becomes supernaturally developed. Your eyesight improves, or so many things are triggered in you, but none of these things are transforming you, because the minute your personal vibration comes to a different level, it is patent to anybody in yoga. After that, you never judge a person by how they are behaving or what they are saying. You just take one look at them and you're just judging them on the vibration. How is the energy field at the moment? And it's very cruel and very unforgiving, which is why I keep saying, don't mistake yogis for Sufis. Sufis, they wear green because they function from the heart chakra, so they are really very compassionate people. Yogis are not like that. Yogis are very hard because they know karma. And they just look, is this person worth wasting time over or not? If you're not vibrating at that level where some benefit can be given from the interaction, they won't interact with you. They are very much a cost benefit people. They are very much like, my work has to mean something. It has to. So for these reasons of not going haywire, for these reasons of not becoming delusional, and for these reasons of just being able to function in the world, because when you get activated in the beginning, you really think, ask her, like, what will happen to me? These are the reasons why you do, because just the discipline of doing the same thing every day, where at that moment the world doesn't exist, the newspaper, the television, the way the world is, the weather, those things don't exist. You go into incubation, you actually go into a separate place. And nothing might happen immediately. Nothing might happen for a week, a month, a year. But one day, merely because of the fact that you have been in the habit of withdrawing and working hard on your personal transformation, just that act of committing on a daily basis, that here, this is what I'm going to do. And there is something more important also. You see, once we start living, we have relationships, we forget to prioritize ourselves. We start living for others. We start living for all the responsibilities and all the work that we have to do on a daily basis. This has to be done, this has to be done. And we forget the relationship with the self is lost. Sadhana is insisting that you cannot ever lose that relationship with the self, because your own self is actually in the end the only thing. It is the only thing you can control and change, you see, because of course that's the other thing, it takes us a long time. Older people know that. Old people are very accepting of everybody because a lifetime of effort has proved to them you cannot change another person. Young people are still optimistic that we can bring it about. I am now middle aged, so I am in neither here nor there, and I see that the young people are all, yeah, we must, and the old people are. But you can change yourself. End of story. Nobody else. though that's not what the culture throws us at, that's not what our expectations are. But if you are aligned, if your body, your mind, your emotions, your breath, your prana is aligned, they are all working together instead of intermittently or sporadically, you have no idea what is going to happen in your life. You just suddenly become a powerful person. And I don't mean overbearing, and I don't mean dominant, and I don't mean bullying. I just mean a powerful person. You become a person they can feel. There is something there. And people start coming to you for advice, people start deferring to you. A whole different sort of influence comes just because you've got yourself aligned. And that is not power that is given because of authority, that is not power that is given because of accomplishment or money, it is just power that comes from authenticity. So the more we do these things, the more we become authentic, the more we become who we are. And extraordinary things start happening. Extraordinary things start happening. Nowadays, I don't even, people write into me with this has happened and that has happened, and I'm like, yeah, okay, wait till what more can happen. They now I have learned, okay, they want little validation for this exciting new change in behavior. So I put on my happy face and pretend to be excited. But I know what is happening is they are finding their authentic self. That is called, our authentic personality is called Swarupam. Swarupa. Most of us don't live in Swarupa, we live in something more interesting called Sarupa, which is the personality we put on for the world. The external social construct, the things we ought to be, how we ought to behave, how we ought to. But the minute you touch Swarupam, the way it cascades into your environment is extraordinary. But it has to be done. It won't be given for free. This is the one thing, the teacher can help. The teacher, the lineage, they can help, they can support, they can advise, they can do, but the work has to be done by you. I remember when I was learning one other process, a very extraordinary statement was made to me, and it's one of the most important things I've ever heard in life. That mentors told me, I will not work harder than you, okay? You will have to learn this, you will have to practice it, I won't carry you. And I thought, that's extraordinary. Because he realized that people tend to see a very dynamic sort of person. People tended to, I am here with you now, things should happen. And he wanted it to be very clear that nothing will happen. You have to do it on your own. So he just made this very, okay, is that understood? I will not work harder than you. You're a very tough guy. If you are 5 minutes late, oh, you are not ready to learn today, go back home. That he, because for him it was like authenticity has to be there in the smallest things you do. Then only when the crisis comes, you can actually have that authentic response. Otherwise, you will either break down, or you will have some manufactured response, or you will have some social response. You won't have an authentic response. So this difference between Swarupam and Sarupam, it was very clearly explained. No, and even in the Yoga Sutras, it is very clearly, right? Verse number 3 and 4 itself, they are dealing with it. Sarupam and Swarupam. So that is the reason. But yes, at the ultimate level, it is true. Enlightenment is not possible just because you are doing something, just because you are doing. Liberation is not possible just because you are doing a process. And it's very wrong. Many organizations, they are going around now saying, so long as you do what is asked of you, liberation is guaranteed. It's being done by way too many organizations today, and I'm sorry. Liberation is one man at a time. Nobody can give a blanket commitment. You know, en masse liberation नहीं होता है और enlightenment भी नहीं होता है. But ठीक है, whatever. Organizations cannot function without exploitation. I have come to accept that. I have come to accept that. So, but still, at least in spiritual matters, you should not lie. Should not tell people that you just do this and we'll guarantee the. See, okay, suppose there is somebody like even Ramana Maharishi. Suppose he could liberate you. He could pull out all your karma and that's it. You're liberated, but you would die. So very often the sadhana is just preparation. The sadhana is just preparation to receive that final gift. I've also heard many yogis say, right, you want to attain, I can give it to you right now. Are you prepared to sacrifice everything in your life for it? Of course not. And ask them to make a donation of some kind, then see all the excuses come up immediately. It is the most important thing in life, provided I get it for free, and it cannot come for free. But those are like the extreme examples I'm giving. I'm just saying, we do it. Why do we need it? And I've seen this. The better the yogi, the more they are dedicated to their daily practice. They don't need it. The rest of their life they can go without doing one breath or one meditation because they are now in complete waking samadhi. They are always connected to that, to the force. They really don't need it, but still that discipline they follow because, again, as was once told to me, there is no depth from which you cannot climb out and there is no height from which you cannot fall. You might have cleared up everything, lifetimes of karma, lifetimes of conditioning, one small little thing was left. Just recently I saw an example. Very nice Swami. He was an American Swami, unfortunately. They tend to have this issue more than others. At age of 57, he finally puts up a Facebook post, I'm getting married. Now, when I looked at that girl, I'm like, yeah, okay, most girls would get married. Most guys would get married to that. Exceptionally beautiful. But by 57, you should have dealt with that desire to have a beautiful girl. And when you take sannyasa, when they make you a Swami, they ask you 3 times. You're sure of this, right? This is renunciation. You are giving up everything, and if it is an authentic parampara, they make you do your own cremation. You are dead. Now, where is this desire to suddenly get married come up from? Because he didn't deal with it. It was there, it was a rankling desire, it was one last little thing, So, the consequence of that is many yogis are now saying, no, I won't initiate white people. They do not understand the commitment that sannyasa means. Because they all come and then they return to the world. That's what they call it. Returning to the world basically means want to get married. You cannot break that, you see, because for them it is awful to see that somebody has taken that vow, put on the girva, and then to just say that I will put it back and I will return to the world. Uma Thurman's father was one of those. He also became Robert Thurman, he was a. So these are all the difficulties at the moment, but that doesn't stop the reason for sadhana. And who says you need to take that renunciation? That is only for exceptional people. Swami Banna, by our cultural standards, it was the last purushartha. Sannyasa was supposed to be at age 75. So, but the fact is, 3 times you are asked, you're sure of this? You're sure of this? You can back away even now. You can back away even now. After that, if you do things like getting married and going back into the world, there is a problem. That's their karma, not mine. It was just very sad because the man was quite an exceptional guy, and now Because he failed in authenticity, simple. He failed in authenticity. He did not recognize himself that I have this desire, and the sadhana forces you to recognize yourself. I would have quit any time. I still feel the very strongly, but no, renunciation is not the path. Renunciation is not needed also. So these safeguards or these groundedness or these aspect of sanity is why we do sadhana. Not for what they tell you that by this you can start flying in the sky and or you will become enlightened in 2 years guaranteed, not for those things. Just to enable you to function at your best. Yeah? Okay? Sarvam Shivam.